religions, the Egyptian religion, the Shinto religion don't say much about reincarnation. My old faith, the Zoroastrian religion, which is perhaps the first monotheistic religion on earth, also doesn't say much, except that in chapter 29 of the Yajashni, there is the soul of the cow, exactly like chapter 10 of the Bhagavad Puran, which wails and says that, look, there is rapine, there is plunder, there is hell on earth. For God's sake, send us a savior. And there is a conference which takes place in heaven between God and the archangels. And finally they say that Zarathustra is one such person who has proved his worth. And we are going to therefore send him. Now, if he has proved his worth, it must have been in a past life. So that's about all that we get about reincarnation. Otherwise we get nothing. On the contrary, the doctrine preached by Zarathustra has no place for reincarnation, because it says that you come here for the first time. When you die, you either go into a heaven which is my kind of heaven, which is an abode of song, music, or you go into a hell which is reformatory in nature. You are actually sort of played a video playback of your entire life when you die, and you see where you have gone wrong, and therefore attempt to choose aright in the next existence. And this goes on until finally there is a cut-off point, a judgment day, and which is called an All Souls Day, so to speak, after which all souls then get resurrected. That is, they become immortal, now being whole or perfect or being able to coexist perfectly with everybody else back on earth. So you have this model, which is the Zoroastrian model, which is largely followed in one of the Judaic sects, because the Jews also had some very shadowy notions of the afterlife, which they call Sheol. And it is only after King Cyrus freed them from Babylon and gave them funds to rebuild their temple, of which the Wailing Wall is a part. You will notice the Wailing Wall is in two parts. The lower part was built out of Persian funds from the Persian treasury in current King Darius' time. They ruled over Judea for about 250 years and obviously influenced their religious thought. So that now you had Jews who were called Pharisees and Sadducees. Sadducees being persons who were the old Jews, who said that we don't believe in any resurrection. And Pharisees being persons who took on the Zoroastrian idea of heaven, hell, and then a judgment day and a resurrection. You have a pretty similar picture so far as Christianity and Islam is concerned. So then ultimately you have the three great faiths which permeate India, which really moot reincarnation. The first is the Jain faith. Now Jainism does not begin with Mahavir. In fact, Mahavir is only the 24th Tirthankar. A Tirthankar is a person who has crossed the ford, so to speak. What he has done is to achieve nirvana in the sense, and this is also interesting, that he has gone back to the original state of his jiv or soul. Now pause here for a minute. According to the Jains, there are 6 dravyas or substances, 1 being animate and 5 being inanimate. The animate one is jiv. And there are any number of jivs floating around in the universe, innumerable number. Incidentally, there is no God. It is very important to remember that the Jain religion is an atheistic religion. It gives you reasons why God does not exist. Now, it is this atheistic faith which first moots transmigration, reincarnation, and the doctrine of karma. Now, these 6 dravyas are eternal. They have always existed, will always exist. It's their permute and combine in the form of human beings, animals, plants, etc. that is spoken of, in which reincarnation takes place. As I told you, the first dravya is jiv, which are these innumerable animate souls, all of whom have consciousness and perception, 2 things. The others are Pudgal, which is matter, then Dharma and Adharma, not in the sense we understand it. Dharma is that which permits motion. For example, water is dharma in which a fish can travel. Adharma is the exact opposite, which brings it back to rest. And finally, space and time in which all this takes place. So, what is interesting in Jainism is you have no God. You have any number of disembodied souls which are floating around, which when they come into contact with Pudgal, within the space-time framework, then produce either humans, animals, or plants. Now, compatible with the fact that there is no God, there is no plan, there is no nothing, you have this massive wheel, and time in Jainism is not linear, it is cyclical. So you have this wheel through which you transmigrate. And the law which operates the wheel is the law of karma. It takes you some 84 lakh lives according to the Jain scriptures, because there are 84 lakh plants, animals, etc. before you reach human status. And once you reach human status, like a game of snakes and ladders, if you do not climb up the moral ladder and you do something wrong, down you slip again. And what is interesting is then you climb it again. And this goes on and goes on and goes on without end. So the importance of Jainism in giving us this doctrine, not only for the first time, but giving it to us, and it's actually borrowed from Jainism and goes into Buddhism and Hinduism, is that you must remember it is first part of an atheistic faith. No plan, no God. There are these jeeves. Everything has a jeev. Incidentally, even a water course has a jeev. So you have transmigration of the highest order. You can go up from a water course to being an amoeba, to being an algae, to being larger forms and better forms of plant and then animal life and then human life. So the ultimate in Jainism is to follow what they call their fivefold path. And that you can follow only when you are human. And that path is that you must first follow the doctrine of ahimsa, most important, which is non-violence to every single thing on earth, not merely living or animate. Second, aparigraha, which is equally important, which is that you give up attachment, desire, because desire produces the problems that we all have. The third, astaya, no stealing. The fourth, brahmacharya, which is celibacy. And the fifth and most important, living by satya, which is truth. Now, it is only when you follow each one of these things strictly that ultimately you can become a jinn, like Rishabdev, the very first Tirthankar, who was really a king. And it is his son Bharat who has given the name Bharat to this country. God alone knows when he lived in hoary antiquity. But he is the very first who has apparently broken through. And broken through in the sense that he has stopped, so far as his soul is concerned, this transmigration up and down in snakes and ladders, if I may put it that way. And finally, seen to it that his jeev, which is his own soul, gets back to its pristine, eternal, and all blissful form. Jainism, again, has no intermediate between a person dying and the next life or the next incarnation, so to speak. So there's an immediate entry into either the womb of a human being or as a seed for a plant or as water in a water course, etc. And this is dictated by the inexorable law of karma. It is inexorable, there is no way out. As you sow, so shall you reap in your human status. When you come to Buddhism, you have a completely different view of reincarnation. The first important thing about Buddhism is that the Buddha